Hello everyone. Okay, I've come on to talk to you about World Pangolin Day, but I hope you will bear with me for just a couple of seconds for those who are watching on the replay, because I am just going to edit the post so that everyone can actually see this live. There we go, public, done, save. Fabulous. And now hopefully if anyone comes on, let me turn the sound down. That makes sense. Okay, brilliant. You have my full attention. So yes, I wanted to come on and talk to you about World Pangolin Day, which just happens to be also my mother's birthday. How lovely. So World Pangolin Day is always the third Saturday in February. So it's always on a Saturday, which is good. But obviously, if you've followed me at all, you will know that pangolins are very dear to my heart, and one of my latest sculptures that I'm doing is of a pangolin, and I will share with you about that particular project and show you where I am, and the fact that I am currently doing about 500 scales for the pangolin's armour, as it were, which is probably very apt for the message today about World Pangolin Day, because I thought rather than just come on and tell you about my project and tell you, you know, that you can actually do lots in terms of donating, I thought it's probably best if I tell you a bit more about the pangolin, because it's quite shocking how few people know about the pangolin. And sometimes you think that because you've heard of it and in your small community you're talking about them all the time, that everybody is too. But of course they're not. And there was a survey and only 8% of British people actually knew what a pangolin was. But what was even more interesting was that people knew more about mermaids and Ewoks, which I'm sorry to break this to people, they don't exist. So more people knew about fantastical creatures and animals than they did about a pangolin, which is quite literally fighting for its life at this moment in time. And in a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some video clips and also fantastic message from Sir David Attenborough, because nobody can put it better than he can, but also to share some resources, because I am going to put below all the links to all the places that I've looked at to put this together, so you can go and find out more, because my biggest output from this is we need to spread the word, if only 8%. And I actually spoke to a family member today, and they didn't know about a pangolin either. And I suddenly realised I'm guilty of not actually talking to everybody about them. So I clearly have my little bubble, and I think that's fine and everybody knows, but they don't. So I think it might be best if I show some of the videos first and then talk some more around it, because there are quite some really pertinent points. And I think we probably don't all know. Let me tell you that I'm going to show you by showing you my creation, because I've only got to adding some of the scales so far. So this is basically, which is probably quite apt, a pangolin with not very many scales on, bearing in mind they are trafficked. They're the most trafficked animal in the world. There are 8 different species. They're in Asia as well as Africa, and the Asian ones are more endangered than the African ones, but they are all on the endangered list, and they are trafficked for their scales, because in traditional Chinese and Vietnamese medicine they believe that there is medicinal qualities. Now if I show you that this is the tail leading up to the body of, this is going to be a little black-bellied pangolin who climbs trees, and it's actually life-size. That it's one of the smallest, if not the smallest, and you will just see that the scales which are on are actually very much like a pine cone, and they're made of keratin. Exactly the same thing as your fingernails, keratin. And I suddenly thought, it's interesting, isn't it, how many of us go and have a manicure and hide the keratin under silicone and make them beautiful and put paint and everything on, and at the other side of the world they're literally ripping them off an animal for that keratin that we're hiding. So pause for thought, isn't it? And it just made me think, perhaps next time when you're sitting having your manicure done and you think about how much it cost, perhaps you could put a very small percent. I've got a fly in the room, sorry about this. You could perhaps put a percentage of that into one of these funds that I'm going to tell you about at the end to actually help save our pangolins, because I'm going to go on to David Attenborough now and he's going to tell you a little bit about them. So let me just go across here. Boom, boom. And I have to actually put my earphone in here so that I can hear what he has to say without it reverb. What's it called when you get the rebound? The echo, so it doesn't echo. So let me play this.
The pangolin situation is dreadful because, of course, the pangolin occurs not only in Africa but in Southeast Asia and so on. And they are they're such enchanting animals. That's neither here nor there whether it's enchanting or not, but they are. They are wonderful, solemn, beautiful creatures living entirely on termites and ants. And the thought that they are being slaughtered, because they are so easy to catch. They have no defences. And the thought that it is endangered is, of course, awful, but it's lunacy too, because pangolins are very important in the whole ecosystem. The sheer humanity of not looking after such a beautiful, gentle animal as a pangolin breaks my heart.
Now you could see at the end there the traffic.org, which were the people to arrange that interview with Sir David Attenborough, and I will put links to that at the bottom as well. So don't worry about having to take off any of the details about the organisations which are coming up in any of the videos. Sorry, I have to contain myself. I feel so passionate about these beautiful creatures, and we can help. So, what I want to do is to, when I've recovered, I'm going to share with you a bit more from this particular organisation. Is called Pangolin Crisis Fund, and they've got some wonderful videos and they do wonderful work, but it's also, as in the title of it says here, we can all help. This is not a fait accompli. We can actually make a difference, and that's why I wanted to come on and share this with you. So, okay, Let's play the next bit. I'm going to read these out. So despite a global trade ban on all 8 species, pangolins are still the world's most trafficked mammal. But it's not too late to reverse the threat of extinction facing the pangolins. We can all help. The demand for pangolin scales, meat and body parts is driving all 8 species towards extinction. So education is key. When the demand stops, the killing can stop too. Rescue. Every year, hundreds of pangolins are intercepted from the illegal trade and left in dire conditions. And that's why it's really important to have these people on the ground who the pangolin rehabilitation and release is an intensive and costly process, but saving a species is priceless. I think we can all agree on that one. And let me stop here before we go on to this particular thing. So I've stopped here because this is actually a gorgeous little video, which is from one of the rehabilitation centres. And it's a little baby pangolin which has not long been born and is basically learning to climb onto its mother's back for the very first time, because that's how baby pangolins get about. They sit at the bottom of their mother's back on the top of the tail and hang on, because they can actually eat termites from a very young age. And I think taking the point from Sir David Attenborough, who said the sad part is that they're really easy to catch because they don't actually have any defences. They're very shy creatures. Most of them only come out at night. So there was a story from the Pangolin Crisis Fund, who were actually saying that one particular pangolin was brought into them because it had actually been rescued very early on, so he wasn't injured, but was so terrified that couldn't drink or eat. So they had to get some fluids in initially, and then they basically drove for hundreds of miles to get them into their habitat to be able to release him back so that he could thrive again. But it just goes to show that, you know, captivity doesn't really work for the pangolin. I understand that there are some pangolins in captivity. There aren't many. And presumably that's because it would have been a baby which had been not abandoned, but their mother had been taken away. So perhaps were brought up in that environment, so it was less stressful. But let me just play this little video. It's absolutely gorgeous of this little baby clambering up and clambering up on his look at that, and Mama gives her a hand. There you go. So beautiful. This is from the Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary, and I will be putting a link below of that as well, so that you can get to see more about the work that actually goes on, because I just, you know, it's one of those things that you need to go and look and research yourself and find out about all these things. Okay, let me just put that on hold. Right, so all the different ways that organisations help. The very first one is education, because as I said, it's not just at home here where we need to educate each other about pangolins and the fact that they are most trafficked animal. And also they were blamed. I mean, I'm quite sure in some quarters they still are blamed for the COVID-19. I mean, they absolutely were not. And you know what, even if they did, it's not exactly their fault. But anyway, they were blamed for it erroneously, if that's a word I can say. But back home here, we need to educate so that, you know, in the schools, as I say, a family member I spoke to today didn't know anything about the pangolin. So I'm thinking I'm guilty. I need to make sure I mention it to people. So my grandchildren, my children, you know, my family members, to make sure that they know. If you just mention it to one person a day, imagine the gradual build out of the, and I don't mean I know all the information. All you need to say is, have you ever heard of a pangolin? And go look it up. We can all Google. I'm sure there are other search engines available, but also educate in Africa and Asia, because if, like the video said, if the demand stops, the killing stops, because it's the keratin from the scales which has been used in medicine. In Vietnam, they have now actually put out an alternative to be used in the traditional medicines that they use. And actually there is we know that there's no medical facts behind the use of it, but like in all things where people have traditionally used things, that's actually quite a difficult re-education to do. So by giving an alternative, and a less offensive alternative or a synthetic alternative, that will help. That could well be one of the first ways. But also in Vietnam, there are restaurants which serve the meat of a pangolin even at its close to extinction stage, and people get this huge buzz from eating an animal which might not exist tomorrow, which is horrendous. I'm not even going to tell you what I think about that. But like I said earlier about the manicure, so the keratin that comes from the pangolin scales, it's no different from your own fingernails. Well, I wonder if anybody who actually exposes the need for pangolin scales in medicine, I wonder if they donated their own fingernails and toenails first. Perhaps that should be a requirement, and perhaps I shouldn't go on about that. I never think of myself as a radical, really. I'd rather give people the information, and hopefully we all make a much better decision because of it. So training. Basically, there are now new laws and new rules for everyone to follow with regards to trafficking and poaching, but everybody on the ground needs to be trained in what they are and how they can stop those things happening, because it's all very well having the laws, but if the people who are actually doing the job haven't been trained in what to do, then it's not actually going to be implemented. The rescue and rehabilitation, as I've said, really important. They're on the ground, not necessarily back here, but there in Africa and Asia, getting them back into their environment. And that's where conservation and looking after the environment that they come from and thrive in is really, really important as well. And obviously the anti-poaching and anti-trafficking operations, they're obviously big operations which need to be funded, and like I say, the education and everything which goes with that. But just wanted to play these little videos off again. So I just think when we see the animal concerned, it just brings it really home to us exactly what we're doing, perhaps. So onto my final slide before we go back. Right, so what can you do? So I decided that we all love a fad. So here's some fads for you to follow. So I'm going to put all these links below of all the places that I've just been to in the last couple of days. Obviously, there are a lot more places, but sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. So even if you just follow one of the links and actually learn yourself a little bit about the pangolin and their plight, ask and inform. Ask someone, have you ever heard of a pangolin? And just tell them. And then they'll go looking. Let's make sure people start saying, what is a pangolin? I've never heard of it. What is that? It's just a conversation, doesn't cost us anything. And let's face it, they are very, very cute. As Sir David Attenborough said, that doesn't make it the reason why we should save them, but it kind of gives an in, doesn't it, to that conversation. Obviously, there's always donations and or adoptions, which actually helps fund all those things I was saying about. And in fact, I started a Just Giving page in February, and it's actually, the money's going to go to the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, and they you can actually go onto their own page and adopt a pangolin directly, and all those things I mentioned on the previous page, their fees and everything go towards that. I still say even if you can only afford the smallest amount that you can, it still makes a difference, because £3 could buy a pair of socks for a ranger who's actually going into that environment and either doing some conservation or just keeping the poachers out and the traffickers out. Share the links. So would love it if you actually went onto any of these pages and shared this video, but just by sharing. And I'm saying, even if you only do one of these, I'm not saying do all of them, but even if you only do one of them, it makes a difference. All of these things make a difference. Now, collectively, they make a magnificent difference, but you only have to do, one of them or two of them, or however many you want to do. But I'm going to go back to me now. There you go. So, as you can see, I am quite passionate about the pangolins, and I find that when I'm actually creating one of my sculptures, I really feel like I am getting to know them, and it feels like a personal thing to me that they are so endangered. So I just really hope that I might have inspired you to either find out a little bit more, or perhaps just click on one of the links below, or if you're going for a manicure today, perhaps donate some of that money, or not some of the money you would have paid, but just a little bit of a percentage of the money. Also, perhaps not have a coffee and put that in my Just Giving page, because you can put as small amount as you want to in that. And over the year, I'm hoping to raise £10,000 for the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation. And I'm delighted to say it's been kicked off already, so I'm very happy with that. Anyway, so yes, I know this is quite serious for me. I don't normally do such serious lives, but I think it's they're well worth it. Yeah, absolutely. So I would absolutely love it if you did some sharing, or even donating. That would be great too, or just doing some educating. Perhaps tell your children about the pangolin today, and because they're very good fighters, aren't they? Excellent. Okay, well, I will be back next week and telling you about my creation and my pangolin when I sell it. As a part of me which really doesn't want to let go, and that perhaps, with them telling me that people don't know anything about pangolins, that perhaps I should keep it and just take it to all my shows so that I can always be telling people about the pangolin. But then when I sell the pangolin, a percentage of that will go into the fund as well, as with all my pieces that I'm selling. So anyway, that's me. I've been on for over 20 minutes now, so I'm going to let you go. But thank you very much for listening, if you're still with me at the end. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.